It's time to send out the report cards, or probably more accurate, the progress reports for the Florida Atlantic offense. Strap in. This going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride. Florida Atlantic Voice, make sure to subscribe, download wherever you get your podcast, presented by Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. There for the community, office in Delray Beach. Robes Law Group, proud presenting sponsor of the Florida Atlantic Voice. Well, as we record this, we are getting ready for Wagner. This will be the final game before you get back into American Athletic Conference play, and then it is conference play. It is in the league for the duration, the rest of the way. And so this is a big-time important one. Before we really dive into the purpose of this edition of the Florida Atlantic Voice, which is going to be going back to the offseason pod where I discussed the 7 different improvements that need to be made to make this a championship-level offense in 2024. We're going to review where we're at with that, and spoiler alert, it's lacking a little bit, but we did find out that Kasen Wiseman is going to see some time for Florida Atlantic behind center. The Colorado transfer, the redshirt freshman, a native of Douglasville, Georgia. Wiseman came to Florida Atlantic in the offseason. He got significant time running the threes during fall camp and in the fall scrimmages. And Tom Herman making the announcement on Tuesday that, yes, Cam Fancher is still the FAU quarterback, but Kasen Wiseman is going to get some reps. He saw a series against UConn. He saw us snap the game before against FIU, but he is he's got a pretty good arm. He can get some zip on the ball. He is not as mobile as Cam Fancher, but he can definitely maneuver with the ball. Just a little bit to know about Kasen Wiseman. And again, Kasen Wiseman not starting, but Kasen Wiseman going to see some time against Wagner out of the FCS. Was a 3-star prospect out of high school, number 25 quarterback in his class, according to ESPN, and the 113th ranked player from the state of Georgia. He was the number 62 quarterback in the country per 247. On 3, had him at number 102. In his respective class, and went on for that season at Colorado. Things just didn't shake out for him there, and he decided to come to FAU. So Kasen Wiseman is going to see some time. I don't know if this is – it's evaluation, obviously, for Tom Herman. Could this precede different decisions down the road? Maybe. I don't know that, though, for certain. But there definitely is a reason Kasen Wiseman is getting some time, because it's no secret. Cam Fancher running the FAU offense has been uneven, up and down. It's been a bit of a struggle for a good portion of the first 4 games of the season. So Kasen Wiseman's going to get his opportunity to show that he is a solidifying force behind center. Will it force a change at that position? I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I don't even know where I'd lean on that. I have no indication that Cam Fancher is actually going to relinquish the job, because, again, it's certainly not just him that's causing this offense to scuffle like it is. But Kasen Wiseman, go ahead and be ready to consume some of him as FAU's quarterback against Wagner Saturday, that 6 o'clock kickoff, Howard Schnellenberger Field at FAU Stadium. Okay, so you may recall several weeks ago, this was even before fall camp started, and here on the Florida Atlantic Voice, I went through the 7 improvements that FAU's offense needed to make in order to be championship caliber in 2024. Just looking at FAU's offense in 2023, which we can all agree was the Achilles heel for Florida Atlantic. The defense, for the most part, carried the day. One of the best in the nation, 12th in the nation in tackles for loss. Certainly held down the fort for the most part. The offense, whole new group, and we knew that coming in. Whole new group, only 9% of its yardage production coming back from a year ago. These are the specific improvements that needed to be made, in my opinion, to help maximize and give FAU the best chance possible at winning a league championship in the American and competing with the likes of Memphis, of USF, of at that time, UTSA, though UTSA definitely, and that'll be FAU's opponents in the next couple of weeks, looks a little bit different without the veteran Frank Harris under center. But those 7 improvements needed to be to come in the following areas: explosive plays, wide receiver balance, third down and fourth down conversion rate, time of possession, red zone, the tight end production, and avoiding a late season swoon. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, that's 7. That's all 7 of them right there. So what I wanted to do today is give you an update now that we are a third of the way through the season. 4 games in. We're no longer in the early part of the year. We have 8 games left to go. So again, a third of the way through this season. That's right. I'm impressed that I was able to come up with that fraction. So that's why I keep riding with it. But we're going to see where we're at here a third of the way through the season with those 7 areas of improvement I identified that would help make Florida Atlantic, if FAU is passing the test on all those, that would lead Florida Atlantic in the right direction towards an AAC crown. And a reminder, FAU is 0-1 right now in American Athletic Conference play, and we'll be back at it over 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks from now, after the bye week against North Texas, and then a trip to UTSA is coming up after that. All right, so let's start with explosive plays. Florida Atlantic explosive plays, 116th in the nation last year, 116th in the country last year in yards per play. Yards per completion, FAU was 130th a year ago. Yards per rush, 109th was FAU. So what about this year? Well, Florida Atlantic has not made much of an improvement in yards per play. In fact, statistically, it's 4.6 yards per play. That was 116th in the nation after 12 games last year. It is 104th in the country through 4 games here in this 2024 campaign. So FAU is 104th in the nation in yards per play, 4.6, same number they were at after the entire season in 2023. FAU is 117th in yards per completion this year, 9.3 yards per completion. That's actually behind last year's ultimate total of 9.5 yards per catch. So FAU's bumped up in national rankings, but overall yards per completion in 4 weeks is below where they were at a year ago. Florida Atlantic, in terms of yards per rush, FAU is at 4.2. That puts them 70th in the country. So that's not bad. FAU 70th in the nation in rushing at 4.2 yards per carry. It was last year 3.5 yards per carry, 109th in the country. So Florida Atlantic's made an improvement in that spot. Here's the thing. Here's the qualifier. If not for the 4th and 1, Zuberi Mobley's 72-yard touchdown run against FIU, let's say that went for a 10-yard run, okay? Or C.J. Campbell's 38-yard touchdown run in garbage time at UConn last weekend. Let's say that was a 10-yard run. Florida Atlantic would be at 3.5 yards per carry. Sound familiar? Same exact number as last year, and they would be flirting with being in the hundreds in national ranking. So the 72-yard run and the 38-yard run, both touchdowns in consecutive weeks, certainly inflate FAU's rushing number. The consistency definitely not there to what 4.2 would suggest. In those 2 big runs, definitely blew up that average a bit. So that's still, in my mind, a work in progress. So ultimate judgment on if FAU is achieving what it needs to in the first of our 7 identifiers of offensive improvements that would make Florida Atlantic a contender in 2024. I'd say they're coming up short in that area. They are not where they need to be at this point. Then there was wide receiver balance because, as we pointed out several weeks ago, LeJontay Wester was Florida Atlantic's passing offense. He had 108 catches last year for 1,168 yards. He was FAU's leading receivers. He was the Americans' top receiver. He was one of the top receivers in all of college football. 108 receptions, 1,168 yards. The next best Florida Atlantic receiver was Tony Johnson, and he had 37 catches on the year, okay? Right now, Florida Atlantic's leading receiver is Amari Hayes. He has 13 catches. Now, as far as wide receiver balance is concerned, a lot of names are bunched up, whether it's Amari Hayes or Marlon Johnson or Jay Sean Platt or Jordan Young. Go down the line. Things aren't nearly as spread out as Wester and then everybody else from a year ago. But here's the problem, and this speaks to a bigger issue with the FAU passing game. Amari Hayes, FAU's leading receiver, 13 catches to this point. He is on pace for 39 receptions as FAU's leading receiver in 2024. 39 receptions would be two better than runner-up Tony Johnson last year with 37. That's a problem. FAU is receiving core on pace for 180 total catches. Florida Atlantic, in a year where nobody said that passing game or would consider that passing game prolific last year, had 265 catches. Again, FAU was on pace for 180 this season. Almost 80 catches lower than they were a year ago. Something's got to give. Something's got to change. So the wide receiver balance is better, but the wide receiver production has fallen off a cliff. That, the second of the 7 offensive improvements to help make FAU an offensive championship contender in the American, lacking, not there. And that needs to start getting going. Then there's third and fourth down conversions for Florida Atlantic. FAU last year was 106th in the country on third down and 106th in the country on fourth down. The conversion rate late in the series, that really held FAU back, especially in the final month of the season. So where's FAU at now? Florida Atlantic on third down is 10 of 49, 20.41%. Folks, that's fourth worst in the country. 131st in the nation. FAU clocks in third down conversion. So FAU was poor 106th last year full season, and a third of the way through this year, FAU ranks 131st on third down. That's not sustainable. Florida Atlantic on fourth down, 106th last year, 69th right now. A third of the way through, 7 of 13, 58.35% on fourth down. That's better. That's better. But FAU's third down conversion rate, because most of the time it's third and long, third and long, third and long, third and behind the sticks, third and long. It doesn't help. It just doesn't help. And we've talked about it exhaustively. But I would argue that third down is maybe the biggest issue for FAU right now. So Florida Atlantic gets half credit here. Third and fourth down conversion, third down, it's worse than it was a year ago. It's trending towards significantly worse than what 106th in the country was a year ago. But fourth down has shot up from 106 to 69. So this will get an incomplete grade. So far, Florida Atlantic, the 7 offensive improvements we identified to help make them an American championship contender, explosive plays, not passing yet. Wide receiver balance, not passing. And they better pick it up or else it's going to be historically low passing production season at FAU. Third and fourth down conversion rate, half credit for the FAU offense. Time of possession last year. Florida Atlantic at 27-20 was 124th in all of college football. 27 minutes, 20 seconds FAU had control of the football last season. That's low. Again, you're not going to win a lot of games when you're 124th in the country in time of possession. This year, FAU barely better at 114th in the country. But through 4 games, the actual time of possession number is worse than last year's. Last year, 27-20, FAU 26 minutes and 50 seconds on average so far through 4 games. We're not talking a 2-game sample size. This is now 4 games this season, and we're talking 2 home games and 2 road games. If you remember, Army, 38 minutes, 39 seconds to FAU's 21 minutes and 21 seconds, including that 24-6 disparity in the second half, and FAU's 24-7 loss in the home opener. And then UConn had the football for nearly 42 minutes against Florida Atlantic. 41-57 to be exact to FAU's 18-03. Yikes. Yeah, this one's not passing either. So 3 of the 4 that we've identified, the 7 offensive improvements need to be made to help FAU become a championship contender in the American in 2024. 3 of the 4 are not passing, and 1 is incomplete. Florida Atlantic, 26 minutes, 50 seconds on the ball per game so far in 2024, 114th in the country. It is tough to, definitely tough to maneuver out of that. That's for certain. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next key to the FAU offense, and that's red zone. The red zone. Last year, Florida Atlantic had 41 red zone attempts on offense. That was 5th fewest in the American Athletic Conference. That was bottom half of the nation, and came up scoreless 10 of 41 red zone trips, okay? This year, Florida Atlantic is actually worse off a third of the way through the season in AAC rankings. Florida Atlantic, 13th of the 14 teams in the American in red zone conversion rate. 66.7%. 8 of 12 FAU is in the red zone. 7 of those touchdowns. That's a good thing when FAU scores in the red zone. It's generally 6/7, but FAU already coming up empty on 4 trips through 4 games this season. They're on pace to outdo their 10 empty-handed trips from a year ago already. And again, 66.7%. Also, Florida Atlantic is on pace for only 36 red zone trips. 41 last year was bottom 5 in the American. FAU's on pace for 36 this season. Florida Atlantic tied second to last right now in the American Athletic Conference in red zone trips. Tied second to last with Rice and with Charlotte. So a lot of work to do there as well. So once again, not passing the Florida Atlantic offense in the red zone category. What about tight ends? What about the tight ends for Florida Atlantic? We pointed out in the edition of the Florida Atlantic Voice several weeks ago that FAU's production has not even come close to the singles in the last 5 years. FAU's combined cumulative tight end production hasn't come close to what Harrison Bryant did in a single season in 2019, the last time that Florida Atlantic competed for a conference championship and won Conference USA. So this year, the tight ends needed to shine brightly. They needed to become regular targets, help spread out the field, help give other options, help occupy the defense's attention. Well, so far in 4 games, Wyatt Sullivan has 2 catches, Zeke Moore has 2 catches, and that is it. A tight end room that had 27 receptions a year ago, still very low, now has 4 through 4 games. That's on pace for 12 catches from your tight end room in 2024. Like, guys, I don't need to say that can't continue. It's almost as if right now you just don't have tight ends as part of your passing game. They're solely just out there as blockers. And Wyatt Sullivan got banged up a little bit at the end of fall camp. Zeke Moore missed the UConn game. That definitely comes into effect. But there is, because of injury, Khalil Brantley, and just because of guys who don't appear to be ready, there's not a lot of depth at that tight end position. So again, Wyatt Sullivan and Zeke Moore both have 2 catches There's been some targets that it just hasn't been hooked up on, but 2 catches for Sullivan, 2 catches for Moore, 4 receptions total for tight ends so far through 4 games, on pace for 12 total tight end receptions in 2024. That is, it's, and I know that I sound like a broken record now, but yeah, it's difficult to win games when you basically are getting nothing in terms of catching the football from your tight ends. And then the 7th was avoid the late season swoon, and to save the day, that's just TBD because there's no way to gauge that. The problem is the last thing you want to do is put yourself in a spot where it doesn't matter if you have a late season swoon or not. You're eliminated from bowl contention. And at 1-3, you got to start piling up some wins now. So you've got Wagner, then bye week, then North Texas, then at UTSA. You got to get moving. There's no way to overstate it. You got to get moving now. So Florida Atlantic is not in great shape in any of the right now 6 prognosticable goals, improvements set forth that we determined were the ones to look out for if FAU wanted to compete for an American Athletic Conference championship this year. Let's just review real quick one more time. Explosive plays. Florida Atlantic last year 116th in the country in yards per play at 4.6. FAU is 130th in yards per completion and 109th in yards per rush. Florida Atlantic this year, 4.6 yards per play. Just like last year, it has bumped up to 104th in the country from finishing 116th last year, but still not good enough to say this is trending in the right direction. This is a passing grade. FAU 117th in yards per completion. So again, a bit of a bump up, but what wouldn't be after last year's final numbers, but behind last year's yardage pace in yards per completion. Right now, FAU comes in at 9.3 yards per catch. Last year, it was at 9.5 through 12 games. And again, you can now gauge and look ahead and at least track where these numbers are headed because you are a third of the way through. Florida Atlantic yards per rush is now 70th in the country. That's strong. That's much better than the 109th that FAU finished at last year. 4.2 yards per carry, 70th in the country. But if you reduce the 72 yards of Barry Mobley run on 4th and 1 down to 10, say a respectable first down carry, and CJ Campbell's 38-yard touchdown run, garbage time against UConn, reduce that to 10, then you go from 4.2 to 3.5 yards per carry, and you're right back in the hundreds in yards per rush in all of college football. So again, we're going to give that a not passing at this point. Wide receiver balance, the actual balance tangibly, numerically is better from a year ago. LeJonte Wester finished with 108 receptions and 1,168 yards. The second best receiver, Tony Johnson, 37 receptions for 411 yards through the air. So you wanted to close that gap a little bit, and FAU definitely has. Here's the problem. Right now, your leading receiver is Amari Hayes, and he's on pace for 39 catches, which would be only 2 better than the second place wideout a year ago, Tony Johnson. That is not a whole lot of receptions. He has 13 to this point, and Amari Hayes and that entire receiving core is on pace for 180 catches after registering 265 last year, which was a problematic number, and only 435 yards receiving for 12 games. Florida Atlantic's on pace for 435 receiving yards. 435. Tony Johnson, the second best receiver a year ago, had 411 by himself. So this pace needs to get picked up. It definitely needs to get picked up. So that, not passing. Third down and fourth down. FAU 106th last year on third down, 106th on fourth down. This year, FAU 10 of 49, now 131st in the country, just over 20% on third down. Yikes. FAU 7 of 13 on fourth down, 69th in the country. So we'll give this half credit. Time of possession, FAU 27-20 last year, 124th in the country. So far, FAU clocks in at 114th in the nation in time of possession, under last year's season-long total at 26.50. So that trends out, extrapolates out to being below last year's time of possession total, with two extremely lopsided games already under their belt. Wrong side of time of possession, Army, where FAU was outpossessed 38-39 to 21-21, including ballpark 24-6 in the second half. UConn was even better than Army. 41 minutes, 57 seconds, holding the ball against Florida Atlantic to 18:03. The defense is on the field a lot, just like last year. There's no balance between the two sides of the ball. The offense needs to start generating some lengthier possessions, wear down defenses, chew up some clock, take some will, and it just has not happened yet. In the red zone, Florida Atlantic fifth fewest in the AAC a year ago with 41 attempts. Florida Atlantic only on pace for 36 red zone attempts this year and tied for second to fewest to this point in the year through a third of the way out. In the American, FAU's bottom half in the nation in that category as well. Did not score on 10 of 41 red zone trips. Florida Atlantic's 13th of 14 teams in red zone conversion rate, 66.7%. Already 4 times they've come up empty in the red zone. So on pace to eclipse last year's 10 times, not able to cash in any way, shape, or form. 7 touchdowns of the 8 conversions. That's the one bright spot, though, but definitely not passing grade there. Red zone for FAU. And then from the tight end position, Florida Atlantic, 27 tight end catches last year. FAU the last 5 years cumulative with the tight end, still haven't reached the production of Harrison Bryant's 2019 season. 27 catches last year. You'd like to see that go up significantly to when we laid out these 7 offensive goals to make FAU a championship contender in the American many weeks ago. Florida Atlantic on pace after 27 last year to have 12 tight end receptions this year. Injuries haven't helped. Khalil Brantley, Wyatt Sullivan, Zeke Moore, but man, is that low. That is really low. And then we're not able yet to determine if FAU can improve late season swoon that saw them lose the final 4 games of 2024. So there it is. And I know I wish it was more positive. I wish it was less bleak than it is. But it is clear that FAU right now not passing any of the set goals we laid out to help them improve into championship contenders on offense in the American. And in fact, in only one category of the 6 that right now you can measure where FAU is getting any sort of credit, things need to turn. And I definitely think that Tom Herman has acknowledged that. Announcing that Kasen Wiseman is going to see some time against Wagner really drives that home, really reinforces that. And we will track that again once we get 2/3 of the way through the season, or through 8 games if you're scoring at home. And so that's where we're at right now. It probably reinforces what you already knew, that Florida Atlantic's offense has been fighting it in a significant manner. Don't forget to listen, download, just subscribe. Just press the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts and get yourself hooked up every week with a couple editions of the Florida Atlantic Voice, presented by Robes Law Group, in the community for you. Office Delray Beach, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. That's ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. Florida Atlantic Voice, presented by our title sponsor, Robes Law Group. We'll talk to you Saturday night from Howard Schnellenberger Field at FAU Stadium. 6 o'clock kickoff, FAU and Wagner. This has been the Florida Atlantic Voice. Bye-bye.